Ebrahim Raisi, the hardline cleric who became Iran's president, Ebrahim Raisi, was a hardline cleric who was close to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the country's supreme leader. Raisi passed away in a helicopter crash on Sunday. After his victory in 2021, conservatives gained firm control over the Islamic Republic as a whole, following a landslide victory in a ballot that saw many well-known moderate and reformist candidates disqualified and the majority of voters abstain. The 63-year-old former head of the judiciary succeeded Hassan Rouhani. When he came to office, Iran was dealing with a number of issues, including as severe economic difficulties, rising tensions in the area, and deadlocked negotiations over the resurrection of a nuclear agreement with major powers. But the anti-government demonstrations that erupted throughout Iran in 2022 and the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, the Palestinian organization that Iran supports, overshadowed his presidency and revealed Iran's covert war with Israel. In addition, a number of Iranians and human rights advocates had persisted in calling for an inquiry into his purported involvement in the mass killings of political detainees during the 1980s. The nation's second biggest city, Mashhad, is the site of the holiest Shia Muslim shrine in Iran. This is where Ebrahim Raisi was born in 1960. At the age of 5, his clergyman father passed away. At the age of 15, Raisi followed in his father's footsteps and enrolled in a seminary in the holy city of Qom. He was identified as a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad by his black turban. He participated in student demonstrations against the Shah, who was supported by the West, until the latter was overthrown in 1979 by the Islamic Revolution, headed by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Following the revolution, he entered the legal profession and worked as a prosecutor in multiple locations, while receiving instruction from Ayatollah Khomeini, who went on to become the president of Iran in 1981. Connections to the Killing Committee in Iran. At the age of 25, Raisi was promoted to deputy prosecutor in Tehran. He was one of 4 judges in that role who presided over secret courts established in 1988 that were later dubbed the Death Committee. Thousands of prisoners who were already serving jail terms for their political activity were retried by the tribunals. The majority belonged to the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, PMOI, commonly known as Mujahideen-e-Khalq, MEK, a socialist opposition party. It is unknown how many people received death sentences from the tribunals, but human rights organizations claim that approximately 5,000 men and women were put to death and interred in unmarked mass graves in what amounted to a crime against humanity. The Islamic Republic's leaders do not dispute that killings have place, but they also avoid talking about specifics or whether each instance was lawful. Raisi denied involvement in the executions on several occasions. However, he added that they were authorized by an Ayatollah Khomeini fatwa, or religious decree. An audio recording from a 1988 conference involving Raisi, a number of other judges, and Ayatollah Hossein Ali Montazeri, 1922-2009, the deputy supreme leader at the time, was leaked in 2016. The executions are described by Montazeri as the biggest crime in the history of the Islamic Republic on the audio recording. After Khomeini passed away a year later, Ayatollah Khamenei took over as the supreme leader, replacing Montazeri as Khomeini's chosen successor. In response to a question in 2021 concerning his supposed involvement in the mass killings, Raisi said reporters, "A judge or prosecutor who has stood up for the public's safety deserves recognition. In every role I have served thus far, I have proudly supported human rights." Unlikely aspirations to be President Raisi shocked many in 2017 by declaring for the presidency. In the first round of the election, fellow cleric Rouhani easily won a second term with 57% of the vote. Raisi, who ran on a platform of fighting corruption but was accused by the president of not doing enough to combat corruption in his role as deputy chairman of the court, finished second with 38%. Raisi's reputation remained untarnished after the setback, and in 2019, Ayatollah Khamenei appointed him to the influential role of Chief Justice. He was chosen the following week to serve as deputy chairman of the Assembly of Experts, an 88-person clerical assembly tasked with choosing the new supreme leader. In her capacity as head of the judiciary, Raisi carried out measures that decreased the number of individuals in the nation who were given death sentences and put to death for offences involving drugs. Still, China alone, Iran continued to execute more people than any other nation. In addition, the judiciary persisted in collaborating with the security agencies to suppress dissent and bring espionage cases against numerous Iranians who held dual nationality or permanent status abroad. Due to Raisi's human rights record, then US President Donald Trump placed sanctions on him in 2019. He was charged of participating in the violent suppression of the opposition Green Movement's rallies following the contentious 2009 presidential election and having administrative authority over the execution of people who were minors at the time of their claimed crimes. Raisi stated that he had come as an independent to the stage to make changes in the executive management of the country and to fight poverty, corruption, humiliation, and discrimination, when he revealed his intention to run for president in 2021. The election was later cast in shadows when a number of well-known moderate and reformist candidates were rejected by the hardline Guardian Council. Voters were urged to boycott the poll by dissidents and some reformists who claimed the procedure was designed to guarantee Raisi would not face any significant competition. In the first round, he went on to achieve a resounding victory with 62% of the vote. Still, less than 49% of voters cast ballots, which is a record low for a presidential election since the revolution of 1979. Raisi vowed to improve the economy to resolve the nation's problems and support any diplomatic plan that resulted in the relaxation of sanctions when he began his 4-year tenure with office that August. He was speaking about the protracted talks to revive a 2015 agreement that restricted Iran's nuclear program. Since the Trump administration withdrew the agreement and reimposed harsh US economic sanctions on the country in 2018, the negotiations have been at a standstill. Since then, Iran has responded by progressively breaking the rules. Raisi also vowed to strengthen Iran's relations with its neighbors while protecting its regional endeavors, characterizing them as a stabilizing force. In August 2022, a deal to revive the nuclear deal with the United States was apparently close, despite Raisi's firm attitude during the discussions. But unfortunately, the events in Iran eclipsed those attempts. Protests against the administration rocked. The Islamic Republic was rocked that September by large-scale demonstrations calling for an end to clerical authority. The murder of Mahsa Amini, a young lady who had been held by morality police in Tehran for reportedly wearing her hijab improperly while in their care, served as the impetus for the Woman Life Freedom movement. Although the UN fact-finding team discovered she was subjected to physical violence that led to her death, the authorities denied she had been mistreated. Authorities used force to quell the unrest after Raisi pledged to deal decisively with it. Although an official death toll has not been disclosed, the UN mission reported that reliable estimates suggested that security forces may have killed as many as 551 protesters, the majority of whom were shot. 75 security personnel, according to the authorities, were slain. The UN mission discovered that the proceedings were summary and depended on confessions obtained through torture, resulting in the detention of over 20,000 protesters and the execution of 9 young male protesters. The religious establishment and the rules pertaining to the hijab continued to be the target of public resentment, even after the protests gradually abated. Numerous women and girls boldly ceased wearing head coverings in public. Raisi and the Iranian parliament attempted to address this behavior with new laws and enforcement actions. Tensions in the region spike 7 years after cutting diplomatic ties. His government consented to an unexpected reconciliation with Saudi Arabia, the dominant Sunni nation in the region and Iran's fiercest adversary. This occurred in March 2023. However, when Hamas launched an unprecedented cross-border attack on southern Israel that October, and Israel retaliated by launching a massive military campaign in Gaza, regional tensions skyrocketed. Simultaneously, in what they claimed was an act of solidarity with the Palestinians, Iran's network of allied armed groups and proxies operating throughout the Middle East, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various militias in Iraq and Syria, markedly increased their attacks against Israel. After Iran launched its first direct military strike against Israel in April, there were increased concerns that the escalation would lead to a regional conflict. In response to a lethal attack on the Iranian consulate in Syria, Raisi backed the decision to fire over 300 missiles and drones at Israel. Israel, its supporters in the West, and its Arab allies shot down nearly all of them. When it was bombed, an airbase in southern Israel only suffered minor damage. Israel retaliated to Western appeals for moderation by firing a missile that struck an Iranian airbase. Raisi downplayed the impact of the attack, claiming that the drone and missile strike from Iran had demonstrated the steely determination of our nation. Raisi emphasized Iran's support for the Palestinians on Sunday at the inauguration of a dam in northwest Iran, saying that Palestine is the first issue of the Muslim world. According to state media, he was returning from a visit with Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian and a number of other high-ranking officials when their chopper made a hard landing in a remote area of mountains. Search attempts were hampered by dense fog and torrential rain, but on Monday, police discovered the accident site and declared Raisi and all other passengers on board dead. The only information available about Raisi's personal life was that he had 2 adult children and that his wife Jamila was a professor at Tehran's Shahid Beheshti University. The hardline leader of Friday prayers in Mashhad, Ayatollah Ahmad Alamolhoda, was his father-in-law.